I feel like you need to document the time period too, because if you're not shooting some of these really good swells or certain people like your friends, what are you going to have to look back at when you're 80 years old? You know what I mean? For me, it's always been more about documenting a time period and the way that I see the world. It's not about, I know I'm not going to have a million followers. It's just not the person I am. I shoot the beach and surfing. You know what I mean?
Hey lady, welcome to Confessions of a Surf Lady, a podcast by the Surf Society. For so long, women have been misrepresented by the surf industry, only highlighting a narrow and exclusive version of who a surf lady can be. But you and I both know that there is so much more to women surfing than that. This podcast right here is a place to tell our story, how we want to tell it. At Confessions of a Surf Lady, you'll meet everyday surf ladies doing amazing things in their local communities, as well as pros, world champs, big wave riders, and badass living legends from women's surf history, all sharing their stoke on this blossoming global women's surf culture. What's even more special though is that you, yes you, will get a chance to participate in the conversation by leaving me your confessions. I'm your host, Laura Day. Think of me as your new favorite surf sister, connecting you to your beautiful global women's surf community, helping you boost your confidence before you head out for your next surf, and even dropping a few surf tips from the Surf Society along the way. If you want to stay connected with me, find me on Instagram. That's at Confessions of a Surf Lady. Kind of use that like my personal account. And then go ahead and follow at Surf Society. That's SURFSOCIETE. There, you'll find a handful of free resources to help you through your surfing journey. All right, lady, thanks again for joining me here at Confessions of a Surf Lady, where we're cultivating a global women's surf culture through thoughtful conversation. Let's get to our episode, yeah? Welcome, Mattson. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.
We've been talking about doing this for so long. We talk about stuff all the time over Instagram, but you're like one of my big brothers when it comes to surfing that I'm super grateful to have. I feel like we have a cultural connection, even though you're not Filipino, you're part Mexican, and you know all the
guilty by
Filipinos.
association because I married one. So.
Yeah, and you know like all the Filipino surfers, which was like part of the help for us like to start the Filipino Surf Club.
Yes, for you and Philip, I just thought it was such a funny coincidence. I'm like, when you guys first connected with each other, what was it, at Liberty Station, right?
Yeah, so we both went to a surf rider event, and I didn't know Philip. I didn't know it was him. He followed me on Instagram, and then he was like, hey, are you Laura? And I was like, yeah, and then we started chatting, and then obviously you came up because you're a mutual connection. And then I was like, I've always wanted to do like a Filipino surf club. And then we were drinking and we're like, let's do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not going to take credit for that, but I know you had reached out to me about something that you wanted to do for yourself and for your culture and for all your friends and something to bring people together. And even if it starts small, I mean, isn't that what most things like surf clubs or any sort of community surf related things start with? Just a couple people, and then it grows, and then your friends bring a friend, and then now you have all these new friends because of it.
I think it's interesting because you have like I said, you're my big brother, so like I'm sorry, but you're older than me, so
one of the many.
So
non-grumpy old people.
Not yet. No, just kidding. No, but you have a different perspective of getting into surfing than I do, right? Because you said you've been surfing since '87, which is as old as I am.
Yeah, okay. 37 years in October.
Don't tell them my age.
Yes. October of '87. My dad's a surfer, so I'm second generation. Been around the ocean my entire life. Both my grandparents lived within walking distance of the ocean. My dad's parents, they lived in Paso Robles, in the 50s and 60s. And then in '69, my grandma actually found a nice little cottage on the sand in Cayucas, which if you don't know where that is, it's in Central California, 5 miles north of Morro Bay. And she basically offered the lady $20,000 on a handshake.
Really?
Yes. And they got the place in 1969. My family ended up having to sell it in 2002 after she passed away. That's a whole nother story, but got to spend my entire life basically on the beach every summer and winter My dad surfed out front all the time. That's where I learned how to surf at Ucas Pier, just north of that, less than a mile north of where my grandparents' house was. And then my mom's parents, they live just up the street from Ledbetter Beach, which, if anybody knows Santa Barbara, there's the Santa Barbara Community College is basically right across the street from Ledbetter. And I've been going there my entire life, too. My grandparents lived across the street from that. So I was very lucky to be close to the ocean, have a dad that surfed, grow up in Southern California, and it was encouraged to a degree that,
You have like that surfing heritage.
Yeah, but I think it always, and this is one thing that I think a lot of people lose sight of, it starts with a love of the ocean. And so I have this theory that we all start as little kids playing in the shore break, and then it moves to riding a boogie board or like a surf mat or something of that nature. Then you get on a longboard, and then you get on a shortboard, and then the progression goes all the way back to, when you're 80 or 90 years old, if you're still alive, like, you're just going to be playing in the shore break again, because it's like our body will only work for so long.
Before we go more into like, I would say like your health journey, and because I think that is like a really touching story that you share, and like your intention behind sharing it is really genuine. I really love it. But before we go into that, I want to talk more about your experience as being like a male surfer in the 90s.
Oh, very different. I would say the one thing that's way more positive now is there's obviously more of a space for the female surf population, and the amount of equipment people have readily available to them now is like not what I basically got to learn on. Was Rockered Out Banana shortboards. Anybody that grew up surfing in the early 90s, you see all the old videos of Kelly Slater and all those guys who are about 5, 6, 7 years older than me. It was a really daunting thing to try and have to learn how to surf on a board with a ton of rocker, really thin, long, narrow. Like, the variety of boards we have now is so much better.
I've been lucky to be able to know because I was surfing back then, but
I get it. It's easier for people to just go pick up a Wave Storm at Costco for $100. I don't think it's necessarily what you should be on the whole time. Maybe to learn when you're young, it's good because you're not going to get beat up. But I think everyone should ride a traditional board at some point, whether that's a twin fin or a single fin or a long, like, glass and wooden fin, like I have, like my dad's old longboards. I feel like that's just been a much better thing for nowadays. And I think also everyone has their own platform. It's not just one thing where you can only be the shortboarder guy or a model or whatever it is. Now we have all these avenues for everyone.
I think the most interesting thing is like the cultural aspects of surfing in the 90s, and like that's the compare and contrast between my experience and your experience.
Oh, totally.
So tell us about what it was like getting out there and getting in the lineup.
Oh, in like late 80s, early 90s, it was I know people, it's so local, this, that. No, it was a lot more violent when I was young.
Really?
I mean, you could be a 12-year-old and get punched out by an adult back then.
God.
Yeah, I've seen stuff. If you've ever seen Flow, the documentary about Al Merrick and all the, you had interviewed Matt George, and they talk about the early days in Santa Barbara. I mean, Jimmy Medico, who was documenting all that stuff back then, people would leave nasty notes on his car, because he was originally from Texas. He lived in Santa Barbara for 3-4 years, and go home, we're going to beat you up, death threats, you name it, just by taking photos of these spots in the early 80s. I mean, I understand to a degree where that comes from. It's like, don't blow it up, so then everyone's there. But at the same time, like, surfing started as a communal thing where everyone's sharing and enjoying it. But yeah, obviously it turned into something completely different, and I've seen bad things happen in the beach stuff I don't even want to mention. Yeah, where teenage kids would get in full-blown fights with people in the water. I've seen people karate kicked on the beach. I've seen people throw rocks at people.
What do you think is the motivation behind that kind of behavior?
That you could hide it. Nowadays, you can't hide that sort of crappy behavior. I'm sure some of us are.
Interesting.
Even like all the bad things we see, and whether it's the media or like the way certain people are dealt with in culture and society, if you're a shitty person or you're going to say something really rude or mean, like, someone's going to film it at some point, put it up.
So you think it just that people just didn't have accountability?
No. Well,
and that's why they were able to get away with this kind of stuff. And that's why they were doing it.
Well, yeah, you could get away with so much because a perfect example is, the guys at Lanada Bay, right?
I've heard stories.
Yeah, that's a pretty localized place in California. I've never surfed there personally. I have friends that grew up surfing there.
Yeah.
I never had any desire to go there. It is a really good wave. I'm not blowing it up by saying that. It's common knowledge. People have gone to court about this, but, it's kind of a hidden, out of sight, out of mind sort of a place. So someone could throw rocks at you or threaten your life or try and fight you over their spot because it's your word against theirs. And if someone has more money or power or privilege in life, they can get away with things. I don't think people can as much now as they're being held more accountable.
It's really interesting though, because there's a couple points that we can go in this conversation, but you talk about how people were threatening people because they were exposing spots, because they were taking pictures and whatnot. But I see both sides, it shouldn't just be held secret for just these number of people. And it's funny though, because I also see people exposing spots on social media, super easy, tagging locations, and it gets under my skin and kind of irritates me. And not in the sense that I don't want other people to know, but for me, it's the sense that there's a lost magic that existed with discovery, with talking to people and being like, hey, I'm going to travel here. Where should I surf? Or having someone take you to a spot that you didn't know about. There's a couple spots, people know about them, but I don't think they're as frequented.
You're not going to tell us your secrets.
Well, I will, some people.
They're in the Philippines every
I know. I would tell, I'd bring people and I'd be like, look, it might be a little bit trying to.
I know where you're going with this, and I can add to that in a second.
Yeah, so I would tell people, I bring them, I'm like, you're only allowed to share this spot if you bring someone here. No drop pins, no directions. Yeah. You bring them here. And that to me is the sharing and the sacredness of sharing a place that you love.
No, I get that.
And I think when people just super exposed, I saw one social media post that was of a local spot down here where the girl took a GoPro on her board and filmed her walking all the way to the spot. And I was like, yo, dude, you're not even you're from fucking New York. The heck are you doing? Just blasting our locations. But I don't know, is it different from what you're telling me of people going and photographing spots in the 80s and 90s?
See, I struggle with this. Being a photographer and a filmmaker, I'm sure people could point the finger at me and say, oh, you're part of the problem too. But I think I've always been pretty good about keeping the spots that not everyone had an easy time finding or knowing the right time to go there. Even to this day, when there's swell coming, I'll get 20 DMs. I don't talk about it, but hey, where are you going? Where are you going to go shoot? Who are you going to be with? And my thing has always been show up, get your out, tune in, go home, wait a day or two, and then post maybe about the swell. But that's one thing too. I've tried to lay off more of, everybody wants that quick dopamine hit, or, we had that swell the end of December of 2023.
Yeah.
It hit the 28th, 29th, 30th. It gets lost in the noise after a while too, where there's just so much, they almost call it social media diarrhea, where it's just, there's so much of the same thing over and over. You don't even know, was this today? Was this last week? Was this a different session? My most liked post ever, which we can show later, but was on the 28th at a certain spot close to my home, but I'm not going to name it. Everyone knows where it is. But I waited 2 days to post it because I felt like it would just get lost in the noise of everything by doing that. But it brings up a lot of good points about what's your responsibility as a photographer or a filmmaker. I feel like you need to document the time period too, because if you're not shooting some of these really good swells or certain people like your friends, what are you going to have to look back at when you're 80 years old? You know what I mean? For me, it's always been more about documenting a time period and the way that I see the world. It's not about, I know I'm not going to have 1 million followers. It's just not the person I am. I shoot the beach and surfing, you know what I mean? Like the Gabriel Medina Olympic photo. How many views has that gotten? But he's in a jersey and he's not even surfing the wave and he's got the one, that's such there's a weird narrative where if you show something of a certain spot from a certain time that you're going to blow it up. But I feel like even the stories with Surfline, they get 30,000, 40,000 views. Mine get 400. I don't think I'm the one under the microscope, but I feel like there's a certain amount of respect you have to have for places and bringing too many people. And
right. Oh my gosh, yeah.
I'm just going to use a quick analogy, but there's a certain spot in San Diego. It's a reef. I'm not going to name where it is, but like this is late 90s, and I was with 3 friends, but there was only 2 guys out. But there was kind of an unspoken rule when we were young, like 1 guy at a time. Wait your turn, and then a half an hour, maybe a friend would come out and another friend would go out, and there's none of that anymore. And yeah, it's sad because there's a lot of people aren't as like aware of like their surroundings like they used to be. But then there's also people who are a lot more cringe and rude, and they would say really hurtful things or threaten your life when you're,
it's a weird
15 years old.
It's like totally nuanced, right? Because I've absolutely been on Facebook groups with people that are clear beginners and will say, I don't know what I'm doing, and another person will be like, it's okay, I don't either, and let's organize a big group of people who don't know what they're doing. And I'll chime in and say like, hey, if you guys plan to go on in those locations, like try this part of the beach because of the way it breaks, like you're going to be safer, and if you go to this location, try this part of the beach. And like I definitely can say that I've always been received positively, as in, hey, it kind of like backhanded, like
that kind of depends on where you're at too,
Well, they have major beaches.
Okay.
But, I'm basically just saying, like, go to these sections because it will be whitewashed. And if you guys don't know what you're doing, it'll be more forgiving.
I guess.
An interesting and nuanced conversation where I still have that respect for sharing places, and sometimes some newer people aren't asking the right questions to gain that respect also.
Yeah.
But then they're also fighting this idea of no one owns the beach. There's so much misogyny, and they go so fly off the other direction that they don't actually look toward the past, which, while it's the past and it wasn't pretty all the time, you have to glean what you can respect from it because it did come before us.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think everyone should research some of the history of surfing. Not all of it is positive. I understand that. It was very one color, let's be honest, other than in Hawaii. Here in California, you see the same sort of faces. I have a book from Sano to like Santa Monica or something. I'll find it when I get home. I'm spacing on the name, but it's like, this is early 40s when there was probably less than 200 surfers, and it's like everyone looks the same, There's a lot more inclusion of not only females and males, but people of all different races, religions, backgrounds now in surfing that needs to be there. We need to have some diversity. I'm not saying like there needs to be a quota for how many people, but everyone should have the ability to want to pick up a surfboard and just try it. But also, what you said, there's this quote that I'll never forget when I was young. What's the difference between a beginner and a kook?
Yes.
And I've never forgotten this, and it said, your attitude.
Yeah.
And there's definitely those gatekeeping mentalities of when I was young. Luckily, I had a dad that surfed that taught me everything, but there's a lot of people who didn't.
Yeah.
And you're thrust into this whole kind of hierarchy, or especially like at certain breaks that I won't name, but there's the older guys, the ones that have been there the longest, and I completely and totally respect that, because I was that guy at the low part of the totem pole. Now I'm older, but this is a different time period now. Way more people enjoy surfing. Yeah, it gets to a point where obviously people are going to be upset because there's just so much.
But I don't even
chaos.
think it's so much about it. Yeah, the chaos. I don't think it's about the volume of people. I think it's about the lack of knowledge
that's been given out.
It's just etiquette, right? Whether you don't follow it because you don't know it, or you don't follow it because you don't give a shit. All of that is what makes the lineup shitty, and the lack of respect for the ocean. And that can also be somebody not understanding that this is not the right day for you to be out there.
Oh, yes.
Or this is not the right conditions for you to be complaining about.
I could say this thing as a photographer sitting in the water, shooting people when people are shooting their boards at my head. And like, I've never had to wear a helmet until the last 4 years because, a lot of people have taken up surfing, but I think a lot of people have overstep their bounds in the sense of, like you were saying, like they're more of a hindrance than a help when it's 6 to 8.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're like, oh, I'm going to be a part of this special day to surf, which I understand that because like I'd want to test myself too, but it takes a certain amount of humility and lack of ego to be like, you know what? This is over my pay grade or ability level.
Yeah.
I need to just sit and observe and watch and respect that, you know, because that could be the difference between you like hurting someone
or hurting
even
yourself.
Killing someone. Like a surfboard is like a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
And the people, oh, I'm sorry.
But that has to do with respect for ocean knowledge.
Oh, totally.
Like being able to look at the ocean and understand, like, that is not going to be okay for me today. Last year, I was in Santa Cruz. It was like late October. And so there was like,
Were
you know.
steamer lane? Are you allowed to say we're
No, I wasn't a steamer. I wasn't there. But I was like, I wanted their points, right? Yeah, pleasure point, basically.
It has its days where it's heavy.
Well, the thing is, it high tide, it crashes against the cliffs,
yes,
right?
I've surfed.
So your entrances and exits, like I walked with the other girls too. They went in and I looked at it. I literally was like, I don't have confidence that I can enter and exit safely.
That's good.
I know some of the other girls went in already, and I walked down the other points to see the other entrances. And when I walked back up, the tide receded enough where I was like, okay, I think I can do this. But even then, like, I was going to sit it out. I was like, you know what? I'm not feeling 100% on it. I'm going to sit it out. And that would have been okay with me.
Yeah.
I ended up looking okay, and I got in, and it was one of my friends, she put it exactly. She's like, if you're going to go in, leave before you get tired. That was like,
Yeah,
I was like, that's
point.
right.
Because if you go too long, I can say the same when I swim and shoot in the water. If I go over my limit that I have for myself, that's when mistakes happen.
Yeah.
Because you can't control your body as
Yeah.
well. Same with surfing. There's those days when I was younger, I'm like, oh, I got to stay out longer. The waves are so good. But then, you know, I've had 6 herniated discs in my back and numerous other injuries. And I'm sure some of them could have been avoided from just being like, you know, maybe it's time I should go in.
Yeah.
I've had one time where I hurt one of the discs in my back, but I just stayed out an extra half an hour longer. If I had just gone in when I thought I should have,
Right.
doing a certain turn. But I mean, that was also factors from other things going on in my life, stress from being in film school and other parts of my life at the time that I probably shouldn't have been. I was kind of running myself into the ground physically. Yeah, that was a perfect example of like, you know what? Sometimes you just need to know when to call it a day, go in, and not be a hindrance to yourself and to everyone else around you. Like,
that applies at any level. That applies at being a beginner and having surfed for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like even last night, I was like, it just got a little bit. The current was really strong. The rip was really strong.
Yeah.
I took a wave. It was a good wave. Turned around. I was just fighting current the whole time, and the sun was going down. And I was like, maybe I should paddle back out. I mean, there was a break, so I went. But even when I was out there watching the quality of the waves coming in, I was like, I should probably make an exit plan now because it's getting dark.
You know it's going to be harder to get in. But one thing you had said earlier was like guys shooting like in the 70s and 80s. I mean, there's shots, and I always find this kind of funny. Like there's like really iconic surf shots, like guys shot in the 70s and 80s who their lives were threatened on. There's this particular spot, I'll just say it was in mainland Mexico, that Kevin Naughton and Craig Peterson, they're basically a duo, like a photographer and a writer, and they would travel all over the world exploring all these spots when they're in their like late teens, early 20s. You know, and they were getting death threats about some of these spots that they were documenting. They weren't even saying where they were. And this is not a new thing. People trolling each other or saying, don't expose my spot or this and that. And yeah, some spots are just overrun at this point because surfing's really fun and people are going to want to try it and do it. And yeah, there's a lot of lack of respect, but it's at the same time, like, why should you tell someone they can't try and do something that they've always been interested in, whether they're a man, woman, they're 7 years old, they're 35, they're 5 years old, whether their parents surf or not. Like, everyone should find out for themselves if this is the life that they want to live.
When I get out of the water, my skin is dry. Enter my new favorite sidekick on and off the beach, this beautiful hair and body dry oil from our sponsors at Dip. Forget the lotion, perfume, or the hair serum because this oil is going to replace them all. It comes in a range of beautiful scents that are phthalate-free, and as always with Dip's commitment to sustainability, this product is refillable. Finally, you can get that just served sun-kissed glow. Spray this silky smooth oil on your skin or run it through your hair to rehydrate your locks after a long day in the salt and sun. The best part is this oil is fast absorbing and leaves no residue on your hands. Get out of the surf and get on with your day with beautiful self-care products from dipalready.com. Use the code Confessions of a Surf Lady to get 15% off at checkout. I'll have the link in the show notes for you.
Also incorporating the aspects of asking questions and being an informed person. And this doesn't even just go to people that are inexperienced in surfing or new. It's to some people that have been surfing for a while where I'm like, man, you need to build some respect for the sport.
I agree. And I feel like you get as much back in your life as you give to others. Something
that's really interesting about your journey, you've shared more about it on social media and you've been a lot more open about it, which I really, really like. Just that vulnerability that you've shared is that you...
Trying to be more authentic, basically.
Well, you have worked through thyroid cancer in the last... Well, tell me about it, because it's only been recent, right?
Yeah. Last July, I went for a CAT scan because I had a lipoma under my chin. I just wanted to make sure there's nothing serious there. And then I went and got a ultrasound on that. And then the lady, the tech there, said my nodules look a little big on my left side. Yeah, so she had recommended me to go see an endocrinologist, to basically look at like ears, throat, nose, that whole area. That was November 30th of last year. And they did a biopsy. So what they do is they take like a needle or, it's a little sharp object and they poke you, and the biopsy is to check to see if there's any cancer cells or anything that's cancerous, like in my neck. And she called me 5 days later and said, you have thyroid cancer and you're going to need to get it taken out relatively soon. And 6 weeks to the day, which middle of January. I had 2 tumors taken out, actually. I found out I had one on my left side, which was 4.5 centimeters. So put into context, basically like a small line, like a giant marble. Like it's pretty big. And then I had a small one on my right side. So he decided to take my whole thyroid out because he didn't want it to be a risk for later in life for me or for something I'd have to deal with. So I had my surgery in January, had to recover from that for a few months, for everything to heal. And then I had my radiation, my iodine radiation therapy, which I had to do in June. So what that does is any leftover scar tissue or any leftover cancer cells that are too small to see, for the doctor, it kills all those off. But I'm very radioactive, so since my daughter's under 10, I had to be physically away from her for 10 days, which is the longest I've ever been away.
Oh, wow.
Her and her entire life and mine. So her and my daughter left for 10 days, and I was by myself, and I had to be very careful about everything that I touched and used and wiped it down, and because you're very radioactive. But the good news is I went and had a full body scan 10 days later. They didn't detect any new cancer, and it doesn't look like anything's coming back. So when I went to go see my doctor last week, he said, I'm basically in that remission point where, I just have some more blood tests, and I have an ultrasound a year from my original surgery, which will be in January. We'll be 1 year. And hopefully no more treatments, and I'm done with this. But it's given me a lot of positive things in my life, how to look at my life, what's my legacy, just trying to be a more authentic, open, positive person, even though I think most of you can agree that I'm pretty extroverted and positive.
How has it changed your relationship with surfing?
This is my perspective, in the sense of, I've been surfing since I was a little kid. I've always been on the ocean my whole life. But, when you get injured, especially if you love surfing, you see it from everybody, even pro-level surfers, oh man, I'm going to be out for 3 weeks. And it's I've been out for 8 months at one point with a herniated disc, so I know it's hard to think of the light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to think that amount of time is so little compared to living to 95 or 90 years old. Because I feel like I'm only halfway through my life at 47. Hopefully I look younger. But it made me like go, well, even though you have to put surfing, like or even being in the water for 3 months and then another couple months to avoid injuries or any of that stuff, doesn't make me less of a surfer or a person that loves the ocean.
Yeah.
This means your health and your family and the people that love you, that's more important than anything. Because like surfing's great and it's enriched my life and it's part of my identity, my lifestyle, every choice I've made, every relationship I said no to. You know, every girlfriend or girl I dated that was mad at me for surfing too long when I was 17. You know what I mean? Like, it's given me like all my best friends. It's given me a sense of purpose, like chasing waves. It sounds like such a silly thing, but it's such an unpredictable thing. You know, like, okay, I'll just use this as a quick example, but you know, like skateboarding, you can get really good at it.
Yeah.
I'd say 2 to 3 years, because if you have a skate park or a ramp or whatever it is, you can go over and over and over.
Right.
No wave is the same. You know, surfing in the ocean is unpredictable as it is, and everybody knows there's only so many days per year that the waves are really that good, and you get that many waves yourself. That's one hard thing I would say about getting older is I need less waves to be happy, which is a great thing.
I've heard that from my other friends too.
But at the same time, I feel like I don't get the reps I did when I was young. Not just because I'm not as limber as I once was as a 22-year-old, but I would say there's just so many more people in the water. You know, you don't get as many opportunities to get good waves to yourself, to just have a session. Yeah, I've had sessions.
But I would say, like, people love to go out when the conditions are good. And sometimes when the conditions don't look that good from the cam or from the report, and you go out, there's some good waves to be had out there, right?
Some of my most favorite sessions were days it didn't look like anything special. But, like, I know it sounds really strange, but, like, kind of overcast, like 2 to 3 foot days. It's a little onshore. Maybe it's like February or March, and like most people just kind of go, I'm gonna shine it or sleep in it, and you know, there's not as many people in the water, and like for me, I don't need perfect waves to have fun. I know a lot of people complain about, surf sucks, but it's like, okay, you know.
Well, I think they suck at surfing.
Sometimes, or maybe their standards are too high, you know, but
honestly, if you're working towards any goal in surfing, any conditions can give you something to work on. So if you think it sucks and you're out there, I mean, obviously we all would prefer like nice long peelers, which we don't get all the time here in California or San Diego. But if you can't figure out how to have fun in what's out there, then like you're just not a very creative person. And not like actually pushing yourself.
Yeah, and isn't that part of the fun of surfing is the unpredictability?
Have you read Blue Mind?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so novelty is one of the reasons why surfing is so enjoyable. Like the novelty and the changing, the constant challenge.
Well, okay, a routine is good, but you get to a point where things are too predictable, it's not as fun. And that's the thing about surfing, that this is what I think as a photographer too, is I've gotten so many great sessions that I've taken photos or videoed over the years, but I love when people don't have a frame of reference. Like, say they've only been around surfing for 3 years, right? Oh, it was the best day ever. It was the biggest day ever. And I'm like, there are those old guys, myself included. It was better in 97 or 98 or 76.
At the time.
No, you know. But, I mean, if you don't have the frame of reference to look back, like, okay, perfect examples. Remember we had that really giant swell on January 6th last year, and Clax was like, you know, there was probably like 30-foot faces.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember.
Everyone's like, this is the biggest day ever. I'm like, top 5. Yes, I agree. Most dangerous, I believe, was that day, because the swell was so close to shore that just waves were breaking in places I've never seen, you know? And my friends up in Santa Barbara were like, dude, I was seeing outer reefs I've never seen before. But it wasn't the cleanest conditions that day, where a week later, I went and shot the same spot, which you can go look on my Instagram and see. And it was a little bit smaller, still good size, you know, probably like 10 to 12 feet. Not 20 foot, but way cleaner, sunny, nicer, offshore. I'd much prefer to shoot a day like that. Maybe not the best day ever, the biggest day, but for me it was great, because for that small window of time when I was there, I got to document it and that's why one reason I love shooting is I can look back at all these memories and I don't know, I think of it with like a smile on my face. It doesn't matter how much you're out. That doesn't make you less of a surfer if you can only be out 3 days a year.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd like to be in the water 3-4 times a week, but if it's 3-4 times a month, then so be it. I remember an older surfer telling me when I was young, he's like, just pick and choose your days when it's really crappy, especially once you're married and you have kids and you have responsibilities and things to do. Wait till the waves are really good and you can shoot all day or surf all day.
I'm not married and I don't have kids, but with like having my own business, I now have to pick and choose and be like, oh, I need to like save my time for when the swell is good. If I know something's coming up, I need to work on these days because otherwise the swell will come and I'll feel guilty that I haven't gotten enough done, and I will choose my business over surfing. Even though my surfing is business, I will still choose the things, because it's important to me to like show up for this.
Especially now, I didn't grow up with social media. Being 47,
so much going on now.
It's like they call like my generation like the Xennial, 77 to like 83. We basically had analog childhood, digital adulthood. I didn't get email until I was 24 years old. This is like 2001. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 24. Kids now, like my daughter has an iPad, she's 9. So it's just like, we had fear of missing out, but not on the same like spectrum that people have now where they feel like
I will like I said, forego sometimes good swell because I want to work. And I do tell myself like, there's always going to be more surf in my future because of the way that I'm also trying to make my future surfing. But there's definitely that FOMO with that, seeing those good swells, those good waves on Instagram.
For someone who doesn't come from a surf background, I always hear that, well, there'll be waves again. I'm like, yeah, but it might not be at this angle, this glassy, this tide, all these things. That's the thing about documenting surfing for so many years is some days will never look like certain days ever again, no matter what. You just can't plan for it. It's just because the ocean is just pure luck. Do you remember Hurricane Marie from 10 years ago? It was that giant south wave at the end of August. Even listening to the guys who are the forecasters at Surfline going, all the things that had to come in play to make it that strong at that time, at that angle, at that tide, all those things, and be a 90-degree day on the beach. It's just we might not see another day like that for 30 years, if ever.
Right.
Yet, So, what I was going to say earlier was Nat Young, the older Nat Young, the one that's from Australia. He said something about 20 years ago in a surf video. He said, as he gets older, it takes less waves for him to feel satisfied and happy. And I would say that's one nice thing about getting older. It doesn't mean that I don't want to still get good waves, but if I get 2 or 3 good waves, I really feel stoked on, whether that's on my Pipo, if it's body surfing, riding a longboard, or even a long fish or anything. I'm just glad to still be a part of it and be healthy enough to still be in the ocean. Because, when you get sick or you get really hurt, like I have been, both cases, it puts your life in the perspective of the sense of you don't know if this could go away tomorrow. We all know people who have had sudden health problems and then they could never surf again or do the things that they love. Having all the experiences I've had from the ocean, whether it be surfing, shooting, sharing moments with friends, boogie boarding, even body surfing, playing in the shore break with my daughter, even if I could never surf another day in my life again, I feel grateful I was able to spend 30 plus years in the water.
Right.
Not only being able to surf with my dad, being able to boogie board with my daughter, getting to surf with my best friends in my 20s and 30s, getting to grow up by the ocean, I'm blessed. Just being able to be a part of that lifestyle. Yeah, there's good and bad with everything. There's territorialism, localism, and all those other negative things.
I think when you remove that and you look at your relationship with nature and what nature and the ocean brought to and how it fostered the relationships you have with other people, that's what's special in it. And to draw back to your photography, that's kind of what sets it in that time, in that moment.
Yeah, it definitely captures special moments in my life, but I would say the one thing I've gotten more than anything from being diagnosed with cancer, now being like in early forms of remission, is you never know when it's your time. You never know when you're going to get sick. Value the people and the things that you have in your life you have the ability to do, because it can be taken away tomorrow and you might not even know it.
Right.
So I tell all my best friends, like, I love them because these are people I've known for 30, 35 years, you know? Yeah, it's weird. I get more emotional when I talk about this stuff now because, you know, getting sick, it's hard. I feel blessed to have had this life. I don't want to, like, hide the person I am anymore. Telling everybody how much I care about. You know, in my whole generation, and I'll end on this because I could go on for days, but like men my age don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to show their emotion. They don't want to be like great to a degree, you know, because like my whole life and a lot of people my age are too afraid to be perceived as a wimp, or they don't want to be called out. Like, that's the whole thing, like, with social media is everyone has an opinion and they can say whatever they want, but, like, the important thing from getting cancer and getting better is, like, you have to tell people how much you care about them, and then also realize, like, the fact that I've gotten to surf for 30-plus years is, like, such a blessing in itself that I know I'm not going to surf as well as I did as a 26-year-old, or... I mean, like, I know for a fact I'm never going to surf trestles ever again.
Really? Why not?
It's too freaking crowded, man. I don't want to get into it. Maybe I'll shoot in the water. But no, what I'm going to say is, like, the FOMO that people have is like, oh, like, I should have been there. But it's like, I think we should turn things around and be like, man, I was really lucky to experience that even once in my life. Like, I can say a lot of special things that I've been able to witness, not just with my friends, but swells I've documented, seeing people catch the first waves, some of my best friends' kids when they were little, and being able to, like, to see that. I think that's an important thing, like, documenting all my work, archiving it. It's like they know we're doing it. I will leave with this. I'm grateful for all the people I've known because of surfing, everyone that's been a part of my life, whether we're friends now or it was just in a time period a long time ago. Like, I was chosen to be a part of this lifestyle for a reason. I was born in a certain place in the world, and I'm grateful. I feel loved. And, you know, I only want good for other people like yourself. I hope that when you're my age, or even when you're 60, you're still surfing, and I see you at shores as an old man and being the guy telling the stories on the bench. You know, that's being a mentor and like an older brother, a kuya, an uncle. Like, I feel blessed that I was the person that got to, that was what I was chosen for, you know?
Yeah.
Surfing's giving me community more than anything, in a sense of like belonging and love. Yeah, there's negative things, but the reason I get emotional is because, like, I don't know if tomorrow someone that I really care about and love and shared ways with or shot could die. Because there's people that are my best friends who got killed 20 years ago this next month, and we should still be surfing together. But, you know, everyone has a different path and unfortunate things happen. So if anybody takes anything from this conversation, it's just that I just have, you know, my light and love and my images to share with the world. And I hope people know that my authenticity is just trying to be who I am to an utmost degree now that I've gotten sick and I'm getting better. So thank you for including me in that and being able to share that. And you're doing a good thing not only for yourself, but I want to say I'm proud of you for...
Thank you.
No, I mean, seriously, like, I'm proud of you for speaking your mind, too, sometimes when I'm sure not everyone agrees with you. And being a woman of color and outspoken, everybody takes that in different ways.
Yeah. as I said, I didn't grow up in surfing, right? I don't have that heritage. But knowing people like you and like we were talking about Kenny too, another big brother, Mark, like these guys that have been in surfing for a lot longer than I have, that had maybe more access to it through your family, your heritage, or where you grew up, and then having you turn around and share that with me. And it's a back and forth relationship. We share a cultural tie because, you know, you're part Mexican, I'm Filipino, and there's a lot of family tie.
Mexicans and Filipinos. My long-standing joke is very similar brown people, just different sorts of rices, and big on community and family. And
we're raised very similarly.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks to the Spanish who colonized both of our.
But we have a very same cultural feeling of like, you know, you're like my big brother. I respect you. I'm, you know, and so I appreciate.
I'm glad to fill that role for not only you, but a lot of other people who I care about and that are younger than me. And I'll leave on this, but I'd say the one thing I've really changed since I got sick is I know a lot of people ask me for my advice. I always kind of have an open door policy, but I think after you get sick, you really have to focus on yourself and healing yourself emotionally and spiritually before you can help anyone else. So thank you for you being part of one of many people that have reached out to me and asked me how I'm feeling and doing. I appreciate it because it makes me feel appreciated and loved. And that's the most important thing. Is I know it sounds cliche, but love is really the most important thing in life because, you know, if surfing's taken away from you, what do you have?
Well, thanks for being on the show, Mattson. We covered a lot. Oh my God, I was like, does that need to be my new goal? I want to get people to cry on my show.
No,
oh, Matt.
It's okay.
It's been good.
I'm not afraid to show that.
I appreciate that.
All right, lady, we've come to the end of our episode, but not the end of the conversation. After listening, I hope that you feel represented, empowered, and even better connected to your surf sisters in our beautiful surf lady community. Let's stay connected before our next episode. Follow me on Instagram at Confessions of a Surf Lady. And follow our amazing women's surf community where we get together to learn more, surf better, and live happy. That is at Surf Society, spelled SOCIETE. Last but not least, join us in our exclusive Surf Society platform. Join us for your first week free by clicking the link at the top of the show notes. Thank you so much for bringing your unique and beautiful self to our lineup at Confessions of a Surf Lady. I'll see you on our next episode. Your host, Laura Day. All right, lady, we've come to the end of our episode, but not the end of the conversation. After listening, I hope that you feel represented, empowered, and even better connected to your surf sisters in our beautiful surf lady community. Let's stay connected before our next episode. Follow me on Instagram at Confessions of a Surf Lady. And follow our amazing women's surf community where we get together to learn more, surf better, and live happy. That is at Surf Society, spelled SOCIETE. Last but not least, join us in our exclusive Surf Society platform. Join us for your first week free by clicking the link at the top of the show notes. Thank you so much for bringing your unique and beautiful self to our lineup at Confessions of a Surf Lady. I'll see you on our next episode. Your host, Laura Day.